Nestled in the Nathdwara region of Rajasthan, along the banks of the Banas River, lives a community whose art has survived for over 800 years. These are the Kumhar artisans of Molela, craftsmen who transform raw earth into sacred devotional plaques offered at temples across the region. What you are about to witness is not merely a craft, it's a living tradition passed from father to son, generation after generation, with no formal instruction, only observation, memory, and practice. The process begins at the river. Molela artisans use the clay obtained from the alluvial soil, which is sourced from the bed of the Banas River and the nearby ponds, usually collected during or just after the monsoon season, when the clay is most abundant and of the finest quality. This careful selection of raw materials is the first and perhaps the most important decision of the entire process. The quality of the finished plaque depends directly on the purity and the texture of the clay collected at this stage. Once collected, the clay is cleaned, sifted, and prepared. The fine clay is mixed with vegetable gum, sawdust, and significantly with cow or donkey dung. This combination may seem unusual, but each ingredient serves a precise purpose. The organic fibers in the sawdust reduce the cracking during the process of drying, while the donkey dung or the cow dung adds structural strength and helps disperse the heat evenly during the process of firing. The mixture is then kneaded thoroughly using both hands and feet until it becomes smooth, uniform paste with the right consistency for shaping. This stage can take several hours, and experienced artisans judge the readiness of the clay entirely by touch. With the clay prepared, the artisan begins forming the base of the plaque, known as the thal. Using a heavy flat stone implement called a pindi, the clay is pressed and spread evenly across a flat surface to a thickness of approximately 1.5 centimeters. It is then smoothened using a club-shaped wooden tool called a patia, and the excess clay is trimmed and the edges shaped using a chisel-like metal tool called a bhaldi. The thal forms the background, the canvas, upon which the entire sculptural composition will be built. Its evenness and consistency are critical to the structural integrity of the final plaque. Before the sculpting of the figures begin, a raised border is added around the edges of the base slab. This border, called the doli, is formed by rolling clay into long tube-like lengths and pressing them carefully along the four sides of the thal. The doli serves both a structural and an aesthetic function. Structurally, it reinforces the edges of the plaque, which are otherwise vulnerable to chipping and cracking during drying and firing. Aesthetically, it frames the devotional scene, giving the plaque a finished, considered appearance that is characteristic to the Molela style. Sculpting of the figure is the most skilled stage of the entire process. Working entirely by hand, without any molds or mechanical aids, the artisan begins constructing the deity or folk figure that is the subject of the plaque. The process is additive. Different sections of the figure, including the torso, limbs, and head, are built up separately and then joined together. Using soft, wet clay, thick coils of clay are flattened to create the body form. Thinner coils are shaped into arms and legs. Fine details such as the nose typically form from a square coil. The systems of jewelry shaped from tiny balls of clay are added with extraordinary precision. No two plaques are identical, each is unique, hand-formed subject, entirely by the skill and intuition of the individual artisan. As the main figure takes shape, the artisan pauses periodically to allow the clay to firm up slightly before adding further detail. This controlled drying prevents the figure from collapsing under the weight of new additions. Once the primary form is stable, the work of detailing begins. Eyes are carefully incised or applied. Elaborate headdresses, garlands, and ornaments, all characteristic of the deities are depicted, are added one element at a time. In some plaques, secondary figures like animals and narrative elements surround the central deity, marking each plaque a complex visual document of folk mythology and devotional belief. The level of detail achieved entirely without specialist tools is remarkable testament to the artisan's skill. Once the sculpting and detailing are complete, the plaque is set aside to dry. First in the shade for a period of 7 to 9 days and then in direct sunlight for approximately 2 additional days. This extended 2-stage drying process is critical. Rapid drying, especially in direct sun from the start, would cause the clay to crack, destroying weeks of careful work. The shade drying allows moisture to leave the clay gradually and evenly, while the subsequent sun drying firms the surface and prepares the piece for firing. During this period, the artisan continues working on other plaques, as several are always at different stages of completion at any given time. The dried plaques are now ready for the kiln. Firing is the transformative stage, the moment at which soft dried clay becomes hard, durable terracotta. The plaques are carefully loaded into traditional kilns and fired at high temperatures. The heat drives out all the remaining moisture, fuses the clay particles together, and imparts the characteristic reddish brown color that is the natural signature of Molela Terracotta. The temperature and duration of firing requires careful judgment. Insufficient heat produces weak, fragile pieces, while excessive heat can cause warping and cracking. This judgment is not guided by instruments, but by the artisan's experience alone accumulated over the years of practice. After firing, the blacks may be sold with the natural terracotta finish or painted according to the preference of the buyer, which is typically a temple or a devotional household. Traditional Molela paints are made from plant and mineral sources mixed with a binding medium of gum arabic. The palette includes red, green, yellow, blue, white, and black. Colors that are not merely decorative but carry devotional and symbolic meaning within the context of folk worship. The paints are applied using brushes made from donkey hair, which produce a particular quality of strokes suited to the bold, expressive style of the work. Each color is applied methodically, section by section, breathing life into the sculpted form. The final stage involves the application of a protective and embellishing coat known as jala. This is specially prepared lacquer made of vegetable gum combined with either ghee or linseed oil. Applied while still warm and liquid, the jala seeps into the surface of the black, sealing it and imparting a distinctive sheen. While the lacquer is still wet, thin sheets of silver foil may be applied to embellish specific sections, typically the face, ornaments, or sacred symbols, adding luminosity and a sense of divine to the finished object. Once the jala sets, the plaque is complete, ready to be offered, worshipped, or installed in a temple or a home shrine. The complete Molela plaque is more than a craft object. It is a devotional image, a historical document, and an expression of a living cultural identity. For the Kumhar artisans of Molela, each plaque represents a continuation of tradition that has endured invasions, droughts, and the pressures of modern mass production. Today, with growing recognition from the cultural institutions and craft organizations, this tradition has earned the geographical indication tag, a formal acknowledgement of its unique and irreplaceable character. Yet, the real preservation of this art lies not in certificates or museums, but in the hands of each new generation of artisans who learn, as the fathers did before them, by watching, by touching, and by making.